Welcome back, everybody, to the Burt Not Bought YouTube channel. Today we went to Spragen Built Customs and we did crimes. We stole the dashboard.
So if you think what we've done up until now is redneck, this is going to take the cake. Sick.
All right, welcome back to the channel. We are again in my super prestigious wiring studio. Upgrade though, I got a couch. I'm a softie. I like it when my fiance is around while I'm working. So little awkward to YouTube while she's around. Anyway, we're here with the crime we've committed, and I learned something tonight, and that is that I kind of need the truck to be a little bit more whole before I can start wiring what's coming out of that fuse box, unfortunately. But it's okay because we can keep wiring in these modules, and let me explain to you what I mean. So if you watched the last video, you saw how I basically ran these two gauges, and these two gauges to a single point. Their wiring, that is. That basically made this a module. So we're going to keep doing that because these modules just kind of plug into each other as they go, right? So we have the dash here, and moving forward, we're actually not going to call this a dash anymore. It's called an IP, which means instrument panel. On this IP, we have the original ignition switch, which is a little crusty, so we're going to try to get in there, maybe clean that up and get it to operate a little smoother. We have the headlight switch, which is off, running lights, headlights, and then also it is the dimmer, so that's kind of cool. Hell of a module on the back side of that thing. We'll see that in a bit. No one knows what this does, and the leads don't go anywhere for me to find out. This was a push button start somebody added. This does the job just fine, so we're actually going to delete that. And then you have your wiper controller. Next up, obviously, we have a radio. And then I don't know if there's going to be anything over here necessarily on the IP itself. And then down below, we have the trailer brake controller. Now, on this IP, we're going to put a harness. And what's going to be nice about that specifically is we'll be able to run basically everything on this thing to 1 or 2 12-pin Deutsch connectors. And maybe we'll have to go bigger than that, actually, thinking about the radio. But anyway, a connector that will be over here on the side of the steering column. So what that means for anybody who goes to take this thing out, if they need to get in behind it for something or they want to get in behind it, whatever, if this thing needs to come back out, you unplug one big connector, unbolt it, and take it out. Modules. Add connectors, man. I'm telling you, make stuff modular. It makes it so much more simple. So everything that you see here will come to a connector right here. Then from there, I just brought home a couple of things. I honestly not really entirely sure why I brought them. This is the high beam controller. It's just a foot pedal on the floor. Just step on it with your foot. Any of you that are my age that never drove an old truck wouldn't know what that is. This guy here is the brake switch. Oh, it was. Well, might owe him a brake switch. I'll figure that out. And then this here, this is a calibration button. I'm going to add this somewhere hidden. That is for the tach and the gauge, the speedometer, and it's like to set their 0 point. This basically just connects them to ground to calibrate their ground signal. So I'm probably going to hide that like right here, maybe. I don't know that you need to press it very often. So, you know, once you start the truck up, you know, your hand's already going to be right here. So if you're sitting there and you're like, why is my speedometer reading a couple miles an hour? You just push the button right here and then just be done. I think you just have to like click it once. Yeah. Yep. All that being said, the objective of today's video is just going to be rewiring the IP. We're going to work on getting everything that's in here right now wired up and brought over to a connector that is just on one side of the steering column. All right, so we're just doing the IP today. This stuff is all just research and preparing for the pain that is sure to follow. Well, that looks a little better. That is the huge pile of mess that I took out of here. Yeah, a lot of wires weren't being used and we're just in there. No need for those. So really the next step right now is just to get this guy back in the IP over there, and then just kind of see how the wires lay out, essentially. It took a little longer than I wanted, but radio wiring makes my skin crawl when it's crazy. So that is about as nice as we could have made that without like just going like balls to the wall and just like basically hardwiring everything, really. Let's get it back in the IP. You know, I just kind of noticed in an effort to create this, I have created oops. So as you can see right here, we got the radio unit reinstalled to the IP. Let's take a look at how it turned out. A heck of a lot better, if you ask me. Just kind of going, you know, left to right here. This is the antenna wire. It was just on a couple of double-sided tape pedestals here. This obviously goes to the antenna. I don't know if the guy didn't listen to the radio or what, but the antenna apparently was just laying in this dash. So Adam, I might need to ask him if to ask the owner if he even listens to the radio, in which case we may not put this back. If he does, we have two options. We either mount it to the truck and run it through the harness to where it needs to go, or I mount it back in the dash. I don't really love that option, but you know, if he doesn't want it on the truck and he still wants some level of radio, I guess we put it in the dash. But I will make some 3D printed mount to kind of like, you know, hang it. Anyway, USB here. I'm going to try to find a USB like a flush mount that can go in the center console below the air ride controller. That way this can just plug into that, and then he'll have a nice spot to plug in his phone cable. This is the outputs to the amp here. Got rid of all the wires we didn't need out of there. And then there was like a front camera, rear camera, and then one other. And I don't think this guy's ever going to use any of that. This truck's never going to get a front or rear camera. The visibility out of the front and rear is great, so I doubt he's ever going to want that. But anyway, that comes up here. These two harnesses were different lengths. Well, I guess maybe these and these. I don't know why they do that. It drives me nuts. So I put a loop in it. Just kind of tuck that up. It's nice and tidy. Then it comes around and goes into the amplifier on the side here. That is all the speaker inputs from the radio to the amplifier. That is also tidied up real nice on the back side of the amp. Then what's next? These are the speaker outputs out of the amp. Those will go to a DTM8 connector that will be in here. Moving on, we've got the amplifier and radio power harness. This goes to the little filter. Again, I don't really know what that thing does, but in the end, if it does nothing, the remote from the radio to the amp is joined, so I'm not really sure. And then switch power will be on its own DTM2 with just one pin. So there will be 3 connectors from this radio to the IP harness. They will be in here kind of, I'm going to try to make a mount to like get them like, you know, sturdy mounted to something. But honestly, if they just sit, it's probably okay too. But I want there to be enough length on these and on the IP harness that if this radio gets pulled out, that it can come out where you can easily get to it and unplug the connectors to the radio and take the unit out. And then as far as the USB goes and the antenna, if it stays, they will also be in the same harness that comes and meets these connectors, and they'll have enough slack that when the radio gets pulled out, they can just pop the USB out of the back of the radio and then pop the antenna out of the back of the amplifier here, and you can get the unit out. Now next up is the wiper control switch, and you can see there are strands of wire here. Literally all I did was grab the wire and tried to straighten it, and I pulled it straight off. So that's not great. So I need to look up the wiring diagram for that. It should be fairly simple, but I want to make sure that I get it right, obviously. So we're going to look up the diagram for that. This is the push button start that's coming out. We're not putting that back. That's the switch nobody understands, so that's coming out as well, and it's going to get a cap like that hole right there. That's the trailer brake controller. This is probably actually going to get mounted elsewhere. I don't know that I'm going to keep it in the dash, but I need to talk to Adam first. This is the light control module here. It's got the dash lights, headlights, running lights all in one unit, and it has the dash light dimmer, so we're actually going to keep that. Then there's this thing. While all the space, well, okay, well, so we're just going to go ahead and pull. We're going to go a very vastly different route. I do want to sit my gauges in here to see how they look. All right, so in general, this is what all of the wiring in the back of the dash is starting to shape up to look like. This is what we're working with, and I'm liking what I'm seeing. That might be the thumbnail right there. All right, it is the next evening, and it's getting a little bit late, but I've been down here reverse engineering these switches to make sure that I fully understand them so that I can perfectly adapt them to this new environment they're going to find themselves in. These 3 switches are original to this truck, so we want to try to retain them as much as possible, even though they aren't necessarily the switches I would use. The way they look is important, so we're going to try to keep them. We've got the wiper switch here. We've got the headlight, well, the general illumination switch for the truck here. It controls the headlights, park lights, tail lights, and the dome light. And then this is the ignition switch here. We'll start here. So this guy, you bring power in from the battery here, and it's in the off position currently. So none of that power goes anywhere. Now, if you rotate it back a position, that goes to accessory, which is this one over here. That'll be like your radio, and like, I don't know, some other, back in the day, it was probably just the radio. Then if you turn it back, that's off. And then if you go forward, that's what we consider like IG2 now. That actually turns on accessory and your ignition, which generally was the ignition coil for the gas engine that was in this truck, and now it will be the ECM for the diesel that's in there now, because the 24 valve is set in the truck at this point. Then when you go past IG2 to start, it connects battery power to the starter solenoid and the ignition coil, so that you don't lose, you know, the engine won't start if there's no power to the coil. So these two are now connected, and the radio would turn off momentarily. Then when you let go, it springs back to IG2, and you have battery power connected to your ECM and your radio. Now, I found something interesting with this switch, and that's why I do this when it's out of the truck and like right in my face, and I'm not upside down in the truck trying to figure this out. When this switch is in the start position, it is supposed to connect this pin to this pin, well, these 4 pins, and this pin. This is the one that's considered start. You can see very tough to see, but right there is an ST. So it does not actually connect the battery to this pin. It connects the battery to this pin. So this is our starter pin here, which is not labeled. So I thought that was interesting. Now the headlight switch, this one generally is pretty uneventful. I have written down just some scratch notes there. Essentially we have battery power coming in. This is our park lights. This is our dash lights, and they're actually controlled by the dimmer function. That this is tough to do one-handed. They're controlled by the dimmer function when you rotate this, which that's kind of cool. If you actually rotate that thing all the way back, it connects this pin to ground and turns the dome light on, so that's nice. Then let's see here. This pin here is considered battery power plus, and I'm not really sure why, because it doesn't really seem like it goes anywhere. And then 5 right here is the rear parking lights. 6 is unused. 7 again is the battery feed, and then 8 is unused. I've never seen one before, so it was good to kind of reverse engineer it and understand it. And there's a couple of different options for different types of cars in here. Like one of the pins in this one that's not functional, when you turn the headlights on, depending on which pin you have the park lights run to, they will turn off with the headlights. So that's kind of cool, but we're not going to do that. We want the parking lights on. I haven't written this one down yet. I was doing a little bit more research, but I'm pretty well figured out on it. Essentially, battery power is going to come in here, and this is actually a circuit breaker. So it does, if there's like too much current running through here, there's like a bimetal strip in there that gets hot, and it'll open and momentarily interrupt the power to the power draw from the motor to let everything cool down. So while this will kind of act as a fuse, power to this pin right here will actually come from that box, and probably like a 20 amp fuse. Now what I find interesting, and I don't fully understand this motor yet, in the off position power is applied to here. In the low position it is applied to here and here, and then in the high position it is applied here to here. So it really just kind of seems like power to the motor and then low and high. So the next step now is to clean my mess, and then we're going to take that power supply out to Adams probably tomorrow, and we are going to figure out how many amps the wiper motor draws and how many amps the headlights, running lights, tail lights, and the dome light draw, to figure out what kind of wire we need to run in and out of here. This type of wiring is about 85% planning. Mil-spec stuff is 95 easily. That's a lot of planning for that, but this is a little bit easier to assemble. So I'd say it's about 85% planning, 15% actually building. And for this dash, we're almost through the planning part, other than tomorrow. So we're getting there. This should come together pretty quick now. All right, it is a brisk 39-degree Saturday morning, and we are pulling into Adam's shop now to take a look at some of the components that we are going to be wiring out of this dashboard. What are you doing? What is that? Let me see that. It's like a burned pack of hot dogs.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as bad as it looks. Where did you find that, dude? All right, so we are back out here with the truck. Adam helped me get set up before he took off. He's going to grab some parts for the other build he's working on. That while I work on this one, we're doing a little bit of a lighting function check, and here is what I found. So we're working our way back to front here. What I've you can do an amperage check by dividing voltage by resistance. But what I found is I like to use my little power supply because it actively checks it for me. And surprisingly, it's pretty accurate. We always shoot high. That way we can, we overbuild the system essentially. But right now we got the running lights hooked up on the rear. Those are just running lights, and they are drawing 0.6 amps. The lights above it here on the rear bumper itself, well, I guess on the rear face, we'll call that the face. Those lights, my understanding, were just brake lights and running lights before, or brake lights and turn signals, and I would like to try to integrate running lights into them as well, get the back of this truck nice and lit up. It's only 3 wires, so what that means is the ground and positive for the running lights remains unchanged, but the ground and the brake lights are going to be a little bit more difficult because up front I'm going to need to make the turn signal relay interrupt the brake light signal. So you're coming up to a turn, your running lights are on, you hit the brakes, the brake lights then take over. Then when you turn on the right turn signal, we need the positive to the right side to be interrupted so that it goes from brake back to running light. So essentially, instead of the relay providing a positive to light this up, we need it to break the positive to dim it down, essentially. So it'll work kind of inverse. But that's some logic I'll have to plan out when I get back to my basement. Now, going up front, we're going to be figuring out the amperage for 6 of those cab lights, which we're basically looking at like 0.1 amps. Also, for the dome light, we're going to hook it up as well. It's those 2 wires hanging out right there. And then the front of this thing is still missing, but we can take a quick look at the engine. Adam's got shoehorned in there. He's got a little bit more figuring to do on this. He's got to get it kind of fitted in here, mocked up, and then he's going to take it out, clean it up, and paint it. He is trying to grab a different brake booster assembly. These are Hydro Boost. He's grabbing a different one of those today because this is the one that went with the 12 valve, and he wants the one that came with the 24 valve. So he's working on grabbing one of those. So some of what we do right there may change a little bit, but that's generally it for up here. We're going to a 1-wire alternator too, so that's going to change. I would like to try and figure out what amperage the wipers draw, but I think that's pretty much it for like that explanation. But the tilt nose is up there, but luckily we are changing out the running lights and the headlights for these guys right here. These things are really nice. The Jax Wax truck, I believe, had these on it. They looked really good. And then these are the headlights. So we'll get to see all those function here in just a minute. And I forgot my tripod, so there's probably not going to be a lot of time lapse right now because well, hang on, Adam's got one. He's using all of his tools. All right, so we've got everything kind of figured out on the back here that we need to do, so we're going to work on some of the front lights here. I did do the cab light. They are 0.1 amps a piece, basically, so there's 5 of them, so we'll plan on probably 3/4 of an amp up there just to be safe, but let's do the headlights now. Okay, low beam. It's 1.1 amps. This is the high beam. It is both bulbs are on, are both LEDs, and it's drawing 1.9. We have a daytime running light that runs off of the, looks like it's showing me green. Oh my, that's cool. Okay, so daytime running light, amber, and daytime running light, and then there's a white option. So I wonder, we could make this turn signal because it switches. However, by regulation, it should be going, it should be on, and then it should do this, and then come back. I don't know if I can put any logic into that without a controller. So we'll try to figure that out. But anyway, the amber light isn't even registering. So we'll call it 0.1. And then the halo isn't registering, so we'll call it 0.1 as well. Okay, we'll have to figure that logic out. That is a lot of wires coming out of this light assembly. That is the front turn signal there. right now, I'm assuming all the lights in here are the same. We've got one of them on, it's 0.1 amps. So now that I understand how many amps this thing draws, we just need to understand what wires we need to use to turn it on for like the running lights and stuff. But that's later. We can just assume that every light in that thing is going to draw basically 0.1 amps, because like right now it's not even registering and it's been on long enough to get hot. So extremely low voltage draw. Basically, this entire system in this truck, to run it at night with the high beams on and the brake lights, we're looking at like an absolute max of like 6 amps. So to be honest, I'm pretty sure that this entire lighting system could be run off of one 18 gauge wire, but of course we're going to beef it up more than that just to be sure. And we're going to run multiple circuits to run the system. That way, like if something happens, we don't lose both headlights, we lose one, kind of deal. You know, throw in that safety factor. Tail lights are the same way. Definitely don't want to lose all your tail lights at once, or all of your brake lights, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of safety factor that comes into this as well that I consider when I'm building these kinds of things, because I get it's like a custom truck and people like assume like, yeah, these kinds of things might have some issues and like it's like more understandable. To me, it's not. Like if you're driving and there's a problem with the system for some reason, I mean, it's one thing if like, you know, something gets up under the truck and takes out the harness. There's that. But like if you're driving along and for some reason something goes on in like the fuse box or whatever, I don't want you to lose both headlights while you're potentially, you know, I mean, these are big trucks, and like if this guy was towing a big trailer, I wouldn't want him to lose both headlights, or you know what I mean, like, or if the main relay cuts out for whatever and you lose your IG2, I don't want you to lose like your brake lights and stuff. So all that stuff's constant power, and like your trailer brake controller and stuff like that, I'll have a fail safe in there so you don't lose your trailer brakes if something happens. Like, we take safety into account here, right? Your electrical system is a safety item. I get there's no airbags, but it's still a safety item. So we definitely take that kind of stuff into account. That explanation winded me. Now, this little doohickey right here is something I'm just now experiencing for the first time. This is called an Anteater standalone transmission controller, and this truck is an automatic, and it's getting a Firepunk built automatic. This is how we're going to control it. We need to run power, ground, and then this goes to the accelerator pedal position sensor to give this an idea of like whether or not this is basically your old kickdown linkage, I think. And I'm sure it does more than just that with it, but essentially that's your kickdown. Like if you go into the pedal, it's wanting to see demand from the driver. This harness here goes to this, which goes to this controller. He explained this to me. It sounds like really these don't get used much, but you kind of like, this is where like your tune is, your interface, like USB, and then this is like the interface to that box. Then you've got your 3 tunes, and then I think this is like to turn overdrive off. So maybe if you're towing, you can turn off your OD with this. So that will go up on the dash somewhere where he can see it, but that won't be like super conspicuous. Then these guys, I'm not exactly sure what wires are coming into this, but this goes out to the transmission control, or the actual transmission. So essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to take this back. It's going to go up in the dash harness, or in the firewall harness. So let's go around the other side of the truck here. This has changed a lot since the last time you saw it. Yep. So anyway, up on top of that doghouse above the engine is essentially where that thing is going to go. So it's near the accelerator pedal position, and it's also not, conspicuous out here in the engine compartment. Then the wires that need to come out to the transmission are going to come out with everything else. It's all going to be integrated into my harness. If there's a connector it needs to pass through, there's a connector it's going to pass through. It is going to run across with the rest of the harness and go down to the connector I was telling you about in the last video, which is the engine interface harness. So essentially anything I put on this truck is going to go through one connector. And then once it makes its way back to the engine, it will break out and then run off to the transmission where it needs to go. Man, I don't know if I need to like drink some water or what, but I think I'm holding my breath too long and I'm explaining this stuff and it's winding me. YouTubing is hard. This is actually a really nice loom on this thing. Whoever built this harness did a good job. I kind of actually hate to cut this off. And some of it may stay, like where it goes out to the transmission, that'll probably stay the same. So like wherever I put that dash or that the engine interface connector, from there, this will probably stay the same. But as far as like in the dash, it's going to get de-loomed, and it'll be wrapped in my stuff, either flex loom or that felt tape. But yeah, this is a really nice little standalone unit. Looks like it's extremely easy to install. I mean, power ground, run this to a wire on the pedal, run this out to your transmission, and run this to that controller, and then you can just like double-sided tape this somewhere. I'm assuming Anteater. Oh no, it's Firepunk. Yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. I'm not a diesel guy at all, but I'll be honest, like it seems like basically everything Firepunk does is like about as good as it gets. So that actually does not surprise me at all that Firepunk Engineering made that. So yeah, hopefully they're not mad at me for taking their loom off. I know you guys, if you're watching this, which there's a very low probability, but if they are watching this and they see this, I'm sorry I took your loom off, but that's a super nice unit. So thanks. That made it easy. So generally, I believe we have what we came for today. There's still, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still quite a bit of work to be done, and there's going to be some extensions in this harness that I'm really trying to avoid, like the ride height sensors. I'd really like that one over there to go through the firewall harness on the engine side, and then come through with everything else, and then run down the tunnel, and then come back to the air ride controller there. It's definitely not going to be long enough for that. So like, I'm going to have to extend that. And I hate that. I don't like extending wires, but in the effort of keeping everything clean, that's what we're going to do. So low key, that sucks. But that's part of the reason this is taking a while. Like, one, I'm taking massive amounts of measurements to make sure that I can mass produce these harnesses. And two, trying to separate what's custom to this truck and then what's custom to that truck. You get the idea, right? So it's just taking a little longer on this one, and the guy's being like really understanding, so I really appreciate him. Obviously there's a lot more than just what I've got going on here. So yeah, the idea is we're just trying to make sure that we turn out a quality product here, and that takes time. All right, it is the next evening. I did a little bit of work last night, but nothing really worth recording. Had a lot of family stuff going on today, so didn't really get to work on this much, but I am down here now, kind of getting ready to get started. Got some spade connectors because all of this is spades. I had to order some more wire. I needed 12 and 14 gauge. All I really have here is 16 gauge, so we're going to start wiring up some of the lights. That's why we went out to the shop yesterday to kind of figure out the function of the truck. You know, the what we are given, we have to make work, right? So glad I did that, because now I know I need a bigger fuse box in the interior. So we're going to go with a 72 position fuse box in the interior, so that we know we have plenty of space, and to be honest, they're pretty inexpensive. Now, like I had previously stated, everything that is in this dash will be coming to a connector that is right here or right here on top of the steering column support. So really what we just need to do is run, 2 feet of wire out of this, and just that'll make sure that it can go whichever route we need it to get where we need it to go. Same goes for this, same goes for this. So I'm going to order an antenna that is a hidden antenna that we can mount in the dash. It's like this big, so it can could probably just double-sided tape to the bottom of this, or we can sit it on top of this, which I think that was an old dome or an old glove box light mount, so we can probably actually sit it on top of this and double-sided tape it. That 3M double-sided tape is wicked stuff, so it won't go anywhere if we use that. This guy needs to come across with the harness and then spit out somewhere where it can go to the center console right there, but not have all of that slop. The antenna will be its own thing. We are going to wire in a couple of lights here and here, a check engine light and a bright lights indicator. That's pretty much it. A lot of talking in this video. Sorry. Let's get to work. Let's actually build something. The headlight switch fully figured out. There was some confusion in the diagram. There's one feed in, or one number 4, it says like battery feed, and then number 7 it says fused battery feed, which is interesting because essentially number 7 feeds your park lights and like your running lights and your dash lights. Number 4 feeds the headlights on pin 6 and then also feeds pin 8, but pin 8 turns on with park lights and off with headlights, where pin 2 turns on with park lights and stays on with headlights. Get what I'm saying? We want the running lights on the front to stay on with the headlights, so we are not going to be using pin 8. But there's a situation where we might, but not on this build. So I am currently waiting on a spool of white wire that is the 12 gauge for the amp and the connectors. We need an 8-pin here and obviously a 2-pin DTP here. So waiting on those connectors. I did have the connectors for the radio control side and the radio power. So those are in and wired. They're good to go. They're run around this route here. So are these guys. Well, just these guys still waiting on. So there'll be another branch coming in that'll meet this one and then get taped up. Also waiting on the larger gauge wire for the wiper motor power. The lighting system we got done. We have 16 gauge feeds in and then one 16 gauge feed out for the headlights. Then these are all the leads on the end here. The ignition switch on this thing has been a tough one. Again, I pretty much only do race cars, so I have my own little proprietary diagram that I use for those. But this truck's a little bit different because I'm really torn between 2 different methods of doing this. So one method keeps everything in the dash harness for the radio. The other method means that a positive signal would have to come out through the IP connector harness, then go to the firewall harness fuse box, which is just the in-car fuse box. Then power would have to come back through that connector to go to the radio. That system allows me to run the entire truck off of one 18 gauge wire coming in and then just positive signal out. So this would go to a bunch of relays to turn on the radio and whatever other accessories you'd want on in the accessory position. This one would turn on power to the big fat relay that will run the switch side of that fuse box. And then this guy, well, this guy here would drive the starter solenoid relay out in, again, that fuse box. And I think that's the route to go, but it makes things a little bit more complicated in here, which is okay. So I think honestly what we're going to do is just run a bunch of 18 gauges, well, 4 18 gauges off of that, and then have them control relays elsewhere. So again, we're waiting on some connectors. I'm also waiting on the relays for the turn signal circuit, because that's going to be a cluster, and the fuse box. So currently, other than running those 4 wires off of the ignition switch, that's basically all the more I can do until I get more parts. Yeah. So I'm going to run those right now off camera, and then I'm going to go upstairs, take a shower, go to bed.